Welcome to 2020. It's Ron here from L.T.L. Tutoring Central, and this is the first video and blog that I've done for this year, so I hope you're off to a great start. The title of this video is Reading Score, Really? And the reason I wrote the blog, which has a different title, but I would like you to check it out because it is a little bit different, but it explains some of the same ideas I'm discussing in the video. In the blog, I've chosen a student and created the name Luke. I'm talking about a real student, but I'm not using a real name in the blog. But sometimes a student comes home and he or she has his report card, and the parents look at it. The reading score is really low, and it can often be very surprising because we thought that Sally or Johnny or whoever could read fairly well. We're reading well at home. We're not having any issues with reading. You maybe started reading very young, and everything, as far as you knew, was going along well in terms of reading. And even previous report cards might have had a good score for reading, and suddenly it's dropped. I've seen this often. That's when I get the first phone call, but sometimes it happens after I've been tutoring a student for a little while, and suddenly the reading score seems quite low, and the parents are surprised. Sometimes I'm surprised as well, but I will explain what happens many times with the reading score. They often separate the reading from the writing, from the oral communication. But the reading score is not always just reading. In fact, it's very rarely just reading. The reading score is based on a lot of other activities, primarily on other activities, such as drawing pictures sometimes, matching characters with definitions, doing something with the plot, writing a paragraph about a chapter, or answering questions, chapter questions. So that entails a lot of other skills that are not just reading. So the student can often read very well, but is not necessarily very good at some of these other activities, and the grades are being based on what they turn in and what the teacher sees, and that's understandable. A teacher's teaching a lot of students. You have to have some method for getting a lot of material accomplished during the class. So teachers do listen to students read, but it isn't the primary source for the grade in most cases. And I've had students and the reading score is very low. We do an assessment, the reading score is good, or as in the blog, very high. Luke was scoring well off the charts, well above his age or grade level. So what's going on here? Why is he almost failing in the reading grade on the report card, but doing exceptionally well on the assessment? And when I worked together, because I had already worked together with him for a while, his reading was stellar. I mean, I could give him anything to read, and he could read it. And he could comprehend it. He could talk to me about the story, about the characters, or if it was a fact-based text, he could tell me what was happening. He even picked up on a lot of the more subtle points or underlying ideas. So he was a very good reader, and he didn't seem to have any issue with comprehending what he was reading in most cases. So what was happening? Why was the reading score so low? It was because of all these other activities. He was, and many of the students I see are very weak at putting something down on paper or even on a computer nowadays. Getting their ideas in written form is the major issue for a lot of students. Now, there can be a reading problem, but I'm talking about students and parents being surprised because they thought that their daughter or their son was reading quite well, or even the student himself or herself being shocked at a low reading score when really they can read quite well. There are, even when you find a reading issue, so when the grade is low, first you want to know, can they actually read? Can they decode words? So that's what you need to know. If they are not able to decode words, why is that? I had a student who was not scanning the page correctly. His eyes were not following. We had to start at that point, which to is really the very, very, very beginning of learning how to read. If you're not scanning the page correctly, if your eyes are not moving across the page from the top left to right and then moving down, you're not going to be able to read very well. There's lots of reasons for that piece, the actual decoding and reading piece. But then there's the comprehension. Perhaps that's the issue. In Luke's case, it wasn't, but in some students, it's the comprehension piece. So they read beautifully, and then when you ask them questions about the story, they had no understanding of it. It could be a memory issue as well, but often I think memory issues get confused with comprehension. They're tied together, and sometimes when assessments are done and they say there's a memory problem or a short-term memory problem, it's not always a short-term memory problem. Sometimes it is, but often it isn't. What it is a comprehension problem, and that's not always directly a short-term memory problem. So you have to kind of weed out where is the issue, and sometimes it's at the very end, as I say, and it's not a reading problem at all or a comprehension problem. It is a writing problem or the ability to do other skills related to the reading but not the actual reading. So if you happen to have a student, a child, or yourself who has a low reading score, you might want to get an assessment, or you might want to look into, even just yourself, a parent can often do this as well, look into where is the problem, because that's what you want to address first. Is it with the actual decoding or reading? Is it phonetics? Is it sight word? Is it comprehension? Is it putting something down on paper or knowing how to begin a paragraph? There's lots of little pieces that you can look into, and you can work on those to strengthen the weak areas, and all of a sudden the grades will start to move up. Sometimes quickly. Usually it takes a little bit of time for many reasons. I won't get into them all here. Some of them are good reasons, some not so good. But working on those weak areas, it will strengthen. It will also make it a lot easier for the child to understand the material once he or she starts writing about it. So it's a good idea anyway to do even on their own, because if you write down a little bit about each chapter, if you're reading a chapter book, for example, or a part of a science book, you will understand it better. If you get your thoughts on paper, you'll understand it more. It's sort of like talking to yourself. I've done videos and blogs about that as well. It helps you to understand the material more. So when your child comes home with a poor score in reading, don't panic. Just look for the weak spots and then build them up. If you need some help, I'm always here to help. It's Ron from L.T.L. Tutoring Central. You can send me your questions, comments, or set up a free information meeting if you want to start tutoring for yourself or for your child. I will put the link below to the website and also to the blog. If you have any questions or comments, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can put the comments right below the video. Also, you can always email me and get a hold of me through the website. In the meantime, have a great start to 2020. I'm wishing you all an excellent year this year. Let's hope it's a good one. Bye-bye for now.